Welcome to Fertilish, the podcast where we get real about fertility, infertility, and everything in between. I'm Laura.
And I'm Brandis. And whether you're knee-deep in treatments, just starting to ask questions, or somewhere in the ish of it all, you're in the right place.
Here we ditch the stigma, break down the science, and have candid conversations about the messy, emotional, and sometimes hilarious journey to growing a family and preserving your fertility.
So grab your coffee, your meds, or just your curiosity, and let's get into it.
Welcome back to another episode of Fertilish Podcast.
Yeah, and today we are talking about all of the different family building options, either for heterosexual couples or the LGBTQ community, and all the kind of different ways you can grow your family.
Yeah, I think that sometimes there's this vision of what going through, fertility treatment looks like, and that it is a woman and a man couple going through fertility treatment together, and there's so many other ways that we have patients presented to us, whether it is a woman. I was actually on an airplane yesterday with a lady who we got to talking about fertility treatment, and she was like, hey, I froze my eggs about a year ago in Atlanta, and now I'm considering, because I just wanted to freeze eggs, but now I'm considering thawing them and using donor sperm. I have an 8-year-old, and I wish that I would have used donor sperm with that child.
That's so funny.
But she was like, do you have patients that come to you as, single moms who are, and I was like, absolutely, all the time.
Yeah.
And so I think that we sometimes that we not forget, but we, when you think about people receiving fertility treatment, you're automatically assuming it's a heterosexual, couple sometimes, and there's so many other ways, that other, forms of patients that we found presented to us. We have a lot of different treatment options based on your needs and your specific circumstances. And so I'm excited to be able to talk about all the ways that we can help people.
Yeah. So I guess aside from, like you said, trying at home or IUI, intrauterine insemination, so this is more so for the IVF realm. There are multiple ways to do it. And you brought up, single. You could be a single mom by choice, or a single dad by choice.
Absolutely.
Obviously, the dad one is a little bit more in depth. But as a single mom by choice, you can get a sperm donor, and this could either be a known donor, so a friend that is giving you sperm. You kind of go through the a reproductive lawyer and all the agreements, or there's kind of a donor where you choose from a sperm bank. And I don't know, do you know about banks that we use or different banks?
Yeah, we so all of the banks that we use are approved by the state of New York. And then we have them listed out on our website. So there's a page that's called How to Choose a Sperm Donor. And it goes into what you're saying exactly, talking about what the difference is between a known donor and choosing donor sperm from a bank. But some of the ones that we work with are Zytex, Cryos, Fairfax, Seattle. And there's additional sperm banks on there as well. But some of those sperm banks even give our patients a discount.
Awesome.
And there are the discount codes listed on that page as well. You do have to have the sperm shipped to one of our clinics for use. So it's not able to be shipped to the patient's home, to be able to utilize that, that discount code. But obviously if that's something that you're interested in, you can reach out to the sperm bank and you can still, have it shipped to your home. You just won't be able to utilize that discount code. But some of the sperm banks even give our patients a 20% discount, which obviously.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that.
It really adds up.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know about the discount thing, but and I think depending on the bank, you can look at the sperm donor's picture, their level of education, what else? The eye color.
like family history, like medical history, I think is something that's, disclosed. Different banks have different levels of like donor sperm, but like you can get donor sperm, and this may be like relatively the norm now, but like where the person has had a background checked, and where they've had like psychiatric evaluations, and then I know there's different levels to like what you're purchasing, and each bank has some variances in them, as far as like what they offer and how many vials you can purchase, or how many what is the minimum, what is the maximum, etc. But yeah, there's a lot of information held within those profiles, so that way you can really try to narrow it down to what's important to you. If that's education, like you're saying, or if it's a particular ethnicity, or a certain phenotype, or
you want it,
like
to
eye
look like
color,
someone,
or
or
certain nose, or
Okay, so so once you have a sperm donor picked, for a single mom by choice, you could do intrauterine insemination, where we're doing that, or we could do IVF, where we stimulate eggs to grow, we take the eggs out, we fertilize those eggs with the donor sperm in a lab. We grow them out 3 to 5 days, 3 to 7, I guess, and then we put them back in the uterus. And then an intrauterine insemination is just where it could be done multiple ways, but we get you to ovulate, we give you a trigger shot or go off your own ovulation, and then do the insemination in clinic. So those are the options. Single dad by choice is a little bit more in depth. Obviously, we have sperm, we would need egg, and a carrier. Now, this is where there's a little bit of surrogates is pretty a common used term,
right.
But most people are usually talking about a gestational carrier. So the difference, a gestational carrier is somebody who it's none of their own genetic material. An embryo is made and it gets put in that person. And then a surrogate means you're also using their egg. So this could be a possibility in single dad by choice. So we could do IUI if you have either a known, and again, this could be somebody that's known or somebody that comes from an agency.
Your best friend is like, hey, like, I would love to help you have a baby. And, and so she's willing to like not only carry for you, but donate her egg to be fertilized by your sperm, or even donor sperm, if you need to utilize donor sperm. Yeah. And then she thus becomes a surrogate for you, a known surrogate.
Yeah, and you could either do, again, IUI or IVF, and then you could do kind of a different way where you use your sperm, and then have an egg donor, and then you have a gestational carrier who it's not her DNA, but she's carrying for you, and so that's that option as well.
And we also have some recommendations and some options that even give our patients a discount for those as well. So if you do not have, an agency that, let's say you're not using a known surrogate or gestational carrier, and you're needing the assistance of an agency to help pair the intended parent with a surrogate or gestational carrier, then we have some agencies that we recommend on our, it's called, I think it's Gestational Surrogacy is the title of the page.
Okay.
On our website. But if you just like type in surrogate or gestational carrier or anything like that in the search bar, it'll pop up. But there are some agencies that like, you don't have to use those agencies to come to CNY. You can use, pretty much any agency you choose, as long as like they're recognized and accepted in the state of New York or in the United States. But we have some recommendations for agencies, and there's even agencies on there that give our patients like a $5,000 discount, which obviously
is huge.
Yeah, for sure. So if you're needing to do IVF, that pays for your cycle,
Yeah, well, and some people, with the gestational carriers and the surrogates, I don't think realize like some people have a child and they have a horrible labor. They hemorrhaged. They had placenta creta, where the placenta kind of grows into the uterus, and that could be life threatening.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I can't have another kid because this happened to me. And we do have patients that have had a creta or horrible help or preeclampsia, and they come in and they decide, okay, I want another child with my DNA, but I don't want to carry. And so that's another reason gestational carriers or surrogates come into play.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did want to mention on that same page, on that same website, if you have like a known surrogate or gestational carrier, we also have the recommendation of some reproductive attorneys.
Oh, awesome.
So, like, let's say you don't necessarily need an agency to match you, the intended parent, with a surrogate or GC, then you're able to still like have someone help navigate the laws and make sure that like the intended parent is protected and that all of the nuances of like bringing a baby, that's delivered by someone else, they're all like all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed,
Yeah.
to make sure that everybody's like just in agreement on everything. It's in writing. Everyone's protected. I think that that's really important to at least have a conversation about with a reproductive attorney, because no matter how well you know this person or how selfless their gift is, things change. Like life happens, feelings get involved, and you just want to make sure that like everybody's on the same page and it's documented, just to prevent any like issues arising down the line.
Oh, yeah. And you bring up a good point about the reproductive lawyers, because I hear a lot of people like either, it's a female-female relationship or they're single and they want to be pregnant, and the joke is always, well, I don't know why you just don't go out and have a one-night stand. And then, and I hear that, like, people joke about that a lot. And there was some guy on TikTok recently that I saw, and he tells this story about how he met some lady at a bar, and she was telling him that she wanted to be a mom, and she couldn't afford whatever treatment. I don't know if she just told him that or who knows. Anyway, so he agrees to do this for her, and she gets pregnant, has this baby, and then all these years later, she's coming after child support. She's showing up at his door. She's saying he's a deadbeat dad. And he's like, no, that wasn't our agreement. Like, so.
I donated sperm.
Yeah, so good idea to go through a lawyer and do it the right way, for sure.
Absolutely. I have mentioned a million times on here, but I love, reality TV. And maybe like a year ago, there was like an episode of, so it was like 90 Day Fiancé. It was like one of those versions of 90 Day Fiancé where like these people were just meeting. And there was a guy on there who was like meeting someone in another country. She was in Europe, and he was from the US, and he traveled the world donating sperm. So he would either have intercourse with the person to donate sperm, or he would like, because he would tell them like, hey, it's obviously like you have a higher chance of getting pregnant, or if they weren't amenable to that, then they would, he would give them the sperm like that he collected in a cup, and then they were doing at-home insemination. But they were like meeting. It was wild. They were like had all these Facebook groups.
Yes.
And I was just like so many issues I can't even imagine could arise from that. Well, first of all, like you don't know who like this person is or like their background. Like, so I think that's when, like a bank could really come in handy, because they're going to give you a lot of information, and they're vetting, not only for like medical issues, but like, did this person like, does this person have a background that you're not like okay with, or, so yeah, I think it's important to like really like think things, like think all of the possible scenarios out, and make the choice that's right for you, of course. But and we do understand that there's like obviously expenses to all of it, and that obviously brings up a barrier sometimes. And that's why we really have worked with the sperm banks, and they have been gracious to be able to give our patients special discounts, because we don't want it to be, we want it to be accessible to everyone, without you having to meet at some random place and we don't want it to be shady or sketchy. Like, we want your experience to be legitimate and good, and obviously sperm banks, when you're getting sperm from them, like they have signed the contracts, and they understand that, like, not only is the donor protected, they're not going to come after you for child support. But the intended parent is protected as well. And
they're only allowed to do so many samples per square mile or something like that, right? Because we don't want, obviously, you don't want people related into close proximity to each other.
Yeah, because, if like that's not regulated whatsoever with this guy, and he's like traveling all over the world. But like, no one is keeping up with who he's donating to, how like close in proximity, like he just wants to, he has like this weird like breeding fetish or something. I don't know.
It's like a Nick Cannon thing.
Yeah. Like be worried about him. Like, I don't know if this is the person you want to get sperm from. But like, yeah. So like, what happens whenever multiple children are born? He is a sperm donor, and then they potentially grow up and meet and have no idea that like who their sperm donor was. And then what if they now have a child? And obviously all the complications that could come from that, like not only from like the awkwardness of like, was I engaged or married to my sibling, but now all the, the medical complications that can come from a child born of that relationship.
Yeah. So again, sperm and egg donor, surrogate, gestational surrogate, super important to do it the right way and through a lawyer.
That's right.
And let's see, we talked on all this. The other cool thing I think I didn't even really know about till I worked here was embryo donation.
Yeah.
And so if you're, again, you could be in a couple or not. Any couple or single person can do this, but people donate their embryos that were unused, and you still get the chance to carry. Obviously, with all these options, you can use a gestational carrier or a surrogate, but basically a couple has made embryos, or a single mom and a sperm donor or whoever, unused embryos that they did not want to discard. And so they donate them. And, I think it's such a cool option, because even though, like, let's say you're in premature ovarian failure or insufficiency, or you diminish ovarian reserve for whatever reason, IVF hasn't worked, to get to still carry a pregnancy and, experience all of that it's such a cool option.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of people are worried about, even with egg donors and embryo donation, that, well, it's not my kid, am I going to feel the same, that sort of thing. And honestly, there's I think we've talked about this before, a new kind of newish area of science called epigenetics, to where, even though the egg and sperm are kind of the biological code per se, your body decides, how those different genes are expressed. And I just think that is like such a cool option. And I think a lot of people don't know about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was even reading kind of an offshoot of that the other day, an article about how, like, when a patient has a miscarriage, or when a person has a miscarriage, how like some of those cells still retain, in the body, and they can go anywhere. So like they, in the lungs and like wherever. Like some of that material is still retained with that person, like even after miscarriage. And so it's really amazing, like how, like our bodies are like nurturing this embryo, although like it may have been created from someone else's sperm and someone else's egg, we're still like carrying them, the entire pregnancy. They implanted in our uterus, attached to our uterine wall,
Yeah.
So, and then our body nurtured them through that whole entire pregnancy. And then, gave birth to them. And the first breath that they breathed was right out of our body.
Yeah.
So it's definitely your child. It's definitely like, it's such a miracle to be able to like have that. We have an embryo donation program at CNY, where our patients have decided that for whatever reason, if they have like achieved their family building goals, or life has maybe changed for them, or whatever the circumstances are, that they have some embryos that they would like to donate to other families. And so there are some additional testing that is required with doing that, and with now, donating those embryos to another patient. And there are like some groups out there that are like specific to like matching. And, people will say like, hey, I have these amount of embryos at this particular clinic, I would like to donate. It's important to have like an open adoption so that we like know each other, or I'm cool with it like being closed. And then if the child wants to find me at one day, like then contacting me, or, whatever it is. So, or it's important to like match with a family that like shares these beliefs.
Yeah.
And so like there's obviously different nuances to like why people would donate to this family over this family, or this person over this person. But it's like what is important to them. We can accept embryos at CNY that are currently stored somewhere else. So like if the embryos were created at a different clinic, however, they have to be transferred in the name of our patient before they come to us. So if you are a patient of CNY and you're wanting to have, and someone's willing to donate embryos to you at another clinic, and you're wanting to bring them to CNY to transfer, they have to transfer them to you prior to them being transferred, like shipped to CNY. Like they have to be your
like your embryos. So they have to
essentially be your embryos.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's shipping. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, and we have a donor team actually that works
who are amazing
with all of this.
Yes. They're amazing. I ask them a million questions all the time, and they're like always so wonderful about helping to answer my questions and to be able to like help me to understand better how to help other patients. And so they're amazing. Like when you're going through a donor process, like you have a donor coordinator that kind of helps you to navigate that process, and explains like what additional testing that you might need and what that means and where you can go to get that done. And if there's special like documents that need to be signed, like what does this mean, and getting those documents to you in a timely manner. And so they really help navigate those processes. And so that's really, a special like gift that other people are giving to each other, to either, give their eggs, their embryos, their sperm, and like a very selfless thing to do. It's really special.
Well, and some people I know, they're like, well, it's not that I'm not open to adoption, I would be, but I feel like I'm grieving, like not being able to experience pregnancy.
Yeah.
And this gives, that a chance. And so, again, I just think it's such a cool option and something that I didn't know about really before I worked here.
Yeah.
And it's just cool. It's just cool overall.
I agree.
I guess, so obviously you can use carriers, you can use donor egg, donor sperm. As far as, same-sex couples, there are also a lot of options. So I guess we'll start with, we just do like male. Couple different ways. So some people will say, well, I just want to use my sperm. Or we want to use both of ours at some point with the same egg donor. So In that case, you would need an egg donor and a gestational carrier or a surrogate if you're going to use their egg. And females have a little bit more options in their relationships. You could do, you could even do at home mosey baby. A lot of people have been doing that, where you order sperm, it goes to your house, and you basically just not exactly an IUI because it's not going in the uterus, but you inject sperm. So there's that at home insemination. IUI, where you get donor sperm, whether it's a known donor from a bank, and we do IUI that way on one of you or both of you, however you're doing that. And then basic IVF, meaning we take out eggs from one person, we fertilize those eggs with sperm, grow them out in the lab, put them back into the same person. And then there's reciprocal IVF, which I think is so cool.
It is.
We take eggs from one person, fertilize it with donor sperm, and then we put that embryo back into the other partner. And so both people get to play a role, and again, so that's so cool.
Yeah, and a question that I get asked quite frequently is if only one person is, retrieving an egg or eggs, and one person is carrying, do both partners need preconception testing? And the answer is yes. And so that I do run into that question quite frequently. That yes, we would need preconception testing from both partners.
Yeah, and good thing you bring that up because testing is a little bit different. So the person that is providing the eggs, it's just blood work. So the blood work that you're going to have that's extra is a CMV screening, which is for cytomegalovirus. We want you to be CMV compatible with sperm. So if you're negative, we recommend the sperm donor be negative. If you're positive, the sperm donor could be positive or negative. We recommend you do it because there is a theoretical risk of having a child with hearing loss if you're incompatible. And then an expanded genetic carrier screening, which we've talked about in our PGT previous episode, but we want to make sure that you're not carriers of the same thing. And if you are, that you're aware and that you have the opportunity for genetic testing of embryos. So those are the extra tests for the egg donor. And then for the person that's carrying, you won't need those tests because we're not using those eggs, but we will still do the basic blood work, thyroid, prolactin, those sort of things. And then you will have typically a saline sonogram or a cavity evaluation of your uterus because we want to make sure that there's no fibroids or polyps in there. Obviously, the person that's just providing us the eggs doesn't need that if they're not planning on carrying. So you do need preconception testing. It's a little bit different for each person.
Yeah, and then do you recommend an HSG, I'm assuming, as well for the person who's having the transferred?
I typically don't.
Okay.
And I know I'm going to get slack for this. Because... do I go into this? Because... So I typically don't. And the reason I don't is because... Well, I always tell people, one, we're not using tubes for IVF, but the second thing is, well, do I have a hydrosalpinx?
Right.
And this is the reason people want to do it. Usually, if somebody, about 60% of the time, if somebody has a hydrosalpinx on, has one, and we do an HSG, 60% of the time it'll show up as an open tube, and that's it. So really... I like to catch these on ultrasound. If I'm suspicious for one, I will usually order an MRI to rule out a hydrosalpinx. That's kind of my deal with those. So usually if we're monitoring you, we can catch a hydrosalpinx on ultrasound. If it's something you're worried about, I'm usually one, if I don't see it on ultrasound, to say, you know what, let's just roll it out, let's do an MRI. Because it won't always show on an HSG. And so for me... I don't order it, but I do for sure order either a saline sonogram or a hysteroscopy.
Okay.
And then, let's see, I think, do we hit all of those? So male, male, female, female. And then, let's see, trans people, so people that are transitioning either male to female or female to male. They can sperm and egg freeze before they transition completely. Like some people that are transitioning to males have hysterectomies, and so we can do an egg retrieval and freeze eggs. um, Sperm freezing, again, we can do that. And then if, you're female to male and on testosterone, we typically can just have you come off of testosterone as long as you still have ovaries, and we can do an egg retrieval.
Yeah, we have a lot of patients or potential patients even that inquire about length of time to come off of medication before, they pursue fertility treatment. Definitely, like, we would recommend that you just like kind of have a consultation with one of, not kind of, but that you would have a consultation with our providers. That way that they're able to look at like how long you've been on medications, what medications that you're on, and look at the individual circumstances that surround your particular needs, and then they can advise you like, hey, this is what we would recommend for you, so that way you can prepare, and then you won't need to have that consult. Like, let's say that they say recommend, and I'm just throwing a number out there, but if they recommend that you're off of medications for 6 months, you won't have to have another consultation. You can just have a follow-up and let, our providers know, like, okay, I've been off of the, meds for 6 months and I'm ready to get started now.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of questions, or I guess a question I get a lot on consults from either, LGBTQ couples, trans couples, things like that. The question is, are we going to be treated differently than heterosexual couples? Does your clinic handle this a lot? And sometimes I'm almost taken aback because it's like, this is so common, like, and, the judge, and I know that's out there, like the judgmental, I guess, attitudes towards that, but here it's such a common thing that it's like, we see it all the time and it's normal. It's just a new way of building a family, and I think it's such a cool tool for people to be able to do that.
Yeah, we pride ourselves on accessibility for everyone, and being a safe space for all of our patients, regardless of any factors.
Yeah.
But I love that we, as a company, we attend Pride events, and we did just recently attend Pride events in many major cities all over the U.S.
Yeah.
We are consistently attending Rainbow Wedding Network events, and I've never seen another fertility clinic at any of their events as I've traveled throughout the whole country, and went to Rainbow Wedding Network events. I've never seen another fertility clinic there, not one single time. I've seen sperm banks, but never another fertility
Everyone's
clinic.
going to sign up now. Yeah, no, I think that's so cool, and I see patients will write in and say things like, if we're going to have a consult, which provider is LGBTQ friendly, and all of us. I don't know one that is not.
I get asked that question quite often as well. Like, who do you recommend that I go to? And that's exactly what I say. Like, you're in good hands with any of our providers. Like, we all have, like, that is company wide. Like, it's not exclusive to like one clinic, or that's another thing that I've been asked. Like, which clinic should I go to? Like, which one is going to be more friendly to our specific scenario? And like, you're good with any of our clinics.
I think something that gets a little bit tricky per se is, I have had some people say, well, we came from this clinic because we were disrespected, or they viewed that, they weren't treated the same. And then, you kind of inquire as to why, and it's because, somebody is a trans female and they were asked about, a semen analysis or different things. And I think it is important to understand that here you are accepted for, whatever you are and whatever you choose or view yourself and all these things. But medically, we do have to ask these questions about, like, even if you do identify as a male, do you have a uterus? Do you have periods? When was your last one? Do you just have ovaries? And so medically, these things are important. It's not so much a thing as, I'm ignoring, your your wishes, but I think it's just important to know that it's not like a disrespect thing. It's just medically these are things that obviously are important to this process.
Yeah, and it helps us to be able to recommend best protocol for your specific circumstances if we like have a comprehensive understanding of your medical history, and then it allows our providers to be able to develop a protocol specifically for you that will work in your best interest to give you the best chances for success.
Yeah, so super important to kind of disclose that to your provider right away about the situation, so that way they like Laura said can order the right testing and do the right plan for you. And again, we've talked about it before, if there are things that are important to you guys, make sure to bring it up with your provider. Religious things, you don't you don't want to make extra embryos. Certain beliefs or things that are important to you, just make sure to bring up to your provider, so that way they can, make sure that you are always respected.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have patients that, choose not to use medications during an IVF cycle, or, they may want to, like you said, try to, to only try to freeze one embryo at a time, transferring after each, embryo that's created. And like, we absolutely are happy to like accommodate that in any manner. Obviously, like, I think that the provider would probably advise you, like, hey, just so you know, there's a possibility that you may need to do additional rounds. Like, we're happy to do so for you, but just so that you have like all the facts and all the potential outcomes, so that you're able to like just have all the knowledge. But it's definitely no judgment on our part. We want you to be able to build your family in the way that you like. Obviously, generally, people don't like seek fertility treatment for fun. But so this may not be necessarily the way that you viewed it, but we want you to have as much control over the situation as possible. And anything that's important to you is important to us.
Yeah, and our job is to educate you on statistics, on treatment, on all these things, and then to help you make an educated decision, not to put our bias at all onto you. So education, so that way you can make you have the knowledge to advocate for yourself and make decisions, and that's our job.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to support you whatever way you need to be supported, and we are more than happy for you to like share that with us. Like, I feel best supported when XYZ happens, or this is something that's really important to me, for us to do it this way. If it's something that like we are not able to accommodate for some reason, like a procedure being done on a specific day, if that we can obviously always let you know that, and then and give you the why, and give you alternative options that hopefully will be like sufficient and acceptable, and still honoring like your journey.
And so I think we talked about egg donors, sperm donors, gestational carriers and surrogates, LGBTQ options, single mom by choice, single dad by choice. Is there anything you can think of that we're missing?
I mean, if you obviously if you have questions about like your particular circumstances, or you feel like that you have circumstances that, you don't feel like that there's a lot of information about, I definitely recommend reaching out to our clinic. We offer 15-minute introductory calls for free. I just said that twice, but 15-minute free introductory calls, where you can be on a Zoom call with a patient liaison and just get additional information about CNY prior to booking like a consultation with a provider, to see if you feel like it's a good fit. If there's a little contact us button on the website, where you can send an email and maybe ask some questions and be given some additional information. There's so much information on the website as well. I definitely recommend, checking that information out. Obviously, a consultation will be best served to you, like for your individual circumstances. And so we always, welcome consultations for patients to be able to to get like specific information for you, but yeah, I mean, you're not committing to any treatment by having a consultation.
Yeah.
It's just to get information with a medical provider. And then once that information has been given to the medical provider and they have your health history and all of that, then they're able to like recommend treatment for you. Again, you're not committing to that. You're not obligated to move forward at all. But once they do that, then our finance team can reach out to you and let you know like how much your particular treatment would cost, and if you have any insurance benefits that would be covered. And then, but it's completely up to you whether you proceed with the treatment at all or proceed with CNY. You're never obligated to do so, but it's never hurts to have more information.
Well, and like you said, scheduling a consult does not mean you have to move forward with treatment, and a consult's good for a year.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have people, make consults about, we just don't know our options.
Yeah.
And we would like to know them, and that's kind of all they want. And so, sometimes I'll tell people, well, because sometimes people will come to us on their consult and have, like, we want to do IVF, we want to do reciprocal IVF, and they just know. And some people don't. So I always ask, like, is there something specific you wanted to do, or are you kind of like new to all of this? And the people that are new to it, I'll go over, IUI, basic IVF, reciprocal IVF, and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that we had all these options. There's, and then they'll decide from there. But, hopefully this podcast episode helps you to realize options, and we take a barrier out of scheduling a consult. But if it's something you're thinking about moving forward with, schedule a talk with one of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if there's anything that you want to reach out to Brandis and I about, we always, our webpage, CNYfertility.com /fertilish. There's a jot form there. If you scroll towards the bottom, then you can, fill that out anonymously. You can put whatever information you want there and send us a message. And then obviously you can always DM us on Instagram. And, obviously we get all of those messages. They come directly to us. So we love seeing your feedback. And we'd love for you to leave us a like or rate our podcast on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast.
All right. We will see you guys next week.
See you next week.